You recite the Shahada quietly, yet outside borders your voice may be met with red tape, or worse, prison walls. In many Muslim-majority states, free speech is a battleground where scholars, journalists, and activists navigate fatwas, state edicts, and social taboos. Tonight, we peel back the veil. How does power silence its critics in Islam's heartlands, and when does protecting faith mutate into muzzling conscience? I'm FaqeerAlKhamosh. Over this series, we'll journey from the mosques of Riyadh to the newsrooms of Cairo, tracking the anatomy of censorship and the rare sparks of dissent. Are we guarding moral order or forging ideological chains? The Quran commands believers to enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, 3:104. Classical jurists debated, does this empower scholars to ban texts or punish speech deemed immoral? From stoning of slanderers to book-burning of heretical works, early caliphs set a precedent. Words that spread fitna deserved suppression. Limits of slander and blasphemy. Slander, KDF. False accusations about piety carried fixed penalties. Jurists saw untethered speech as more dangerous than swords. It could shred communal trust. Blasphemy laws. Invoking God in sacrilege was met with capital or exile. Over centuries, rulers broadened definitions. Any criticism of authority or sacred symbols became potential blasphemy, justifying censorship. Guardians of orthodoxy, madhab enforcers. Each school of thought policed its boundaries. Shafi courts persecuted dissenters for challenging madhab doctrines. Hanbals clashed with Mutazila thinkers over theological nuance, often resorting to book bans. This institutionalization of censorship protected unity but stifled intellectual ferment. Philosophical provocation. If words can wound a community's faith, must we muzzle the tongue to safeguard belief? Or does suppressing speech betray the very trust in reason and conscience that Islam elevated? When guardians of orthodoxy wield censorship, does the shield of faith morph into a cage for the mind? In the 21st century, censorship wears a new face. Law codes borrowed from colonial archives, AI-powered monitoring, and social media vigilantism. Governments in Riyadh, Cairo, Tehran deploy blasphemy statutes and anti-fake news decrees to criminalize dissent, while online platforms harvest your every like as evidence of thought crime. Let's expose how states and algorithms conspire to police belief. Saudi Arabia's religious police redux from Mutawa'an to Cyber Mutawan. The once feared Commission for the Promotion of Virtue now integrates online monitoring. Tweets criticizing clerical decrees invite summons. WhatsApp groups sharing secular articles are infiltrated. A single forwarded message can trigger criminal investigation under anti-terror laws. Blasphemy and national security. Riyadh's 2018 anti-cybercrime law punishes ridiculing religious symbols with up to 5 years imprisonment. Critics note that religious symbols include anything the state deems sacrosanct, so political cartoons or academic critiques of jurisprudence risk branded extremism. Egypt's press laws and the newsroom clamp down emergency decrees. Since 2017, Egypt's Press Law 180 criminalizes spreading false news and damaging national unity. Journalists probing the Grand Muftah's rulings or exposing fatwa-driven crackdowns face license revocations and pretrial detention. Court of public opinion. State-aligned media brands, independent voices as enemies of religion, fueling street campaigns against dissenters. A single televised sermon slamming official fatwas can lead to online mobs demanding clerical censure, creating a feedback loop where public opinion justifies legal action. Iran's morality police meet the intelligence web. Virtual chains, Iran's cyber police, FATA, monitors social platforms for insults to sanctities. Automatic keyword filters flag posts mentioning Ayatollah alongside terms like fraud or error. Those flagged enter review by intelligence officers who can arrest users without warrant. Control through fear. In calm, students whisper their critiques through encrypted apps, only to see classmates disappear after a midnight knock. The state's claim to protect the faith transforms mosques into surveillance outposts, where loyalty to clergy trumps sincerity of belief. Algorithmic enforcement by tech platforms, local data centers, local laws. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter maintain regional offices in Dubai, Istanbul, and Kuala Lumpur. They employ local trust and safety teams to remove content that violates national religious norms, even when it doesn't breach global community standards. A scholarly lecture on Tafsir could vanish at midnight, replaced by state propaganda videos. The chilling effect. When scholars' channels are demonetized or blocked, younger imams self-censor, avoiding nuanced theological debate for fear of account suspension. The next generation inherits a sanitized faith, rote recitations safe from takedown, but robbed of critical inquiry. Philosophical provocation, protection, or pawn. When states claim to defend belief by muzzling questioning, they risk converting faith into ideology, a rigid orthodoxy enforced by legal and digital armies. True religious freedom demands that conscience roam unshackled by fear of legal reprisal or algorithmic erasure. But when every syllable may be policed, does belief survive as devotion or degrade into discreet compliance? In societies where words can wound more deeply than swords, courageous journalists and reformist scholars have dared to question dogma and paid with their freedom, their livelihoods, even their lives. From Cairo's cold prison cells to Ankara's courtrooms, these stories reveal the human cost of state-sanctioned silence. Tonight, we honor those voices and ask, when speaking truth becomes a crime, who then speaks for the voiceless? The journalist in Cairo case of Lina Hassan, a veteran columnist at a leading Egyptian daily. Lina wrote a series on the need to reinterpret hudud laws in light of modern human rights. Her articles, meticulously footnoted with Quranic exegesis, struck a nerve. Within weeks, security services labeled her enemy of religion, revoked her press card, and detained her under the pretext of spreading false news. Lina spent 9 months in Torah prison, emerging broken in health but resolute in spirit. Aftermath. Her newspaper quietly cleansed its archives of her bylines. Colleagues now speak of her only in whispers. Yet her essays circulate underground on flash drives, testaments to a truth too potent to vanish. The seminary scholar in Tehran, case of Mullah Reza Farhadi, a respected Quran teacher in Qom, Mullah Reza's lectures emphasized Quranic principles of free will and compassion, subtly critiquing mandatory hijab decrees. Videos of his classes went viral, prompting the Revolutionary Guards to accuse him of undermining public morality. Arrested on blasphemy charges, he endured solitary confinement. Under pressure, state media broadcast coerced recantations, but underground networks preserved unedited recordings, fueling quiet rebellion among seminary students. Aftermath. Though officially stripped of his teaching license, Mullah Reza's ideas seeded new informal study circles in private homes, proof that silencing a speaker cannot fully silence a message. The blogger in Istanbul case of Emre Yılmaz, running a popular Turkish blog on Islam and secularism, Emre challenged both extremist narratives and state-endorsed Islamism. His nuanced critiques of presidential decrees on mosque construction led to daily fines under Turkey's "insulting the president" statutes. Facing bankruptcy and potential jail time, Emre fled to Europe, but continues to post anonymously, his exile a living metaphor for a citizenship that punishes conscience. Aftermath. Turkish courts labeled his writings terror propaganda, while readers inside Turkey share mirror sites to keep his voice alive, an online underground railroad for free thought. The digital activist in Kuala Lumpur, case of Nur Aisha. A young coder and YouTuber, Nur created animated explainer videos on Quranic interpretations that embraced LQBI inclusion. Within weeks, religious authorities issued a fatwa calling her work deviant. Cyber police raided her home, confiscated equipment, and charged her under the Sedition Act. Nur now faces trial in a climate where digital expression is policed as strictly as pulpits. Aftermath. Her channel was demonetized and shadow banned, but supporters mirror upload her content on decentralized platforms, an act of digital solidarity against algorithmic erasure. Philosophical reckoning. Truth as sacrament. When speaking truth demands sacrifice, it reveals speech's sacred dimension. These martyrs of the pen remind us that censorship is not simply shadow-boxing ideas, it is a direct assault on conscience itself. If the price of honesty is exile or imprisonment, is society protecting faith or mortgaging its moral future? When official channels close, the brave build back doors. In living rooms and darknet forums, artists, coders, and poets forge hidden networks of dissent, blending faith, satire, and encryption to outpace censors. Tonight, we explore the secret architecture of resistance, how culture and code become the front line in the fight for free speech. Encrypted messaging as sacred trust, WhatsApp and Telegram, safe havens. Activists create invite-only groups where imams debate reformist interpretations and journalists share draft articles. End-to-end encryption assures confidentiality, but trust rests on personal bonds. Invitations pass only through known contacts, echoing classical Sanad chains of transmission. Authenticity maintained through human links. Vetting and vigilance. New members undergo real-world vetting, face-to-face confirmation or voice recognition, before joining. This ritual secures the network but limits scale, creating tight circles that mirror early Muslim assemblies, small yet resilient. The poetics of punchlines, satire as sabotage. Cartoonists and meme makers sketch lampooning parodies of repressive clerics, overlaying Quranic verses with modern commentary. A single viral image, cleric balanced on a censorship gavel, circulates anonymously, puncturing fear with laughter. Humor becomes a Trojan horse for truth. Underground zines and audio dramas, printed in secret and distributed discreetly, zines mix poetry with reportage on censorship raids. Audio dramas reimagine historical debates. Socrates meets Ibn Rushd in a modern cafe, drawing parallels between classical free thought and today's struggles. Digital safe rooms for scholars, mirror sites, and peer-to-peer. Hosting. When a reformist sheikh's website is blocked by state ISPs, supporters spin up mirror domains and share magnet links via BitTorrent. Legal takedown notices are met with clones, digital hydras that refuse to die. Anonymous podcast networks, using Tor and decentralized platforms, Podcasters record interviews with dissident thinkers under pseudonyms. Listeners subscribe through hidden forums, downloading episodes at odd hours, sacrificing convenience for conscience. Artistic insurrections, street art and calligraphy. At night, muralists paint tram-size calligraphic stencils on city walls, verses on truth and tolerance, contrasted with outlines of broken chains. Authorities buff over the art at dawn, but new pieces appear elsewhere, a ceaseless game of hide-and-seek that turns urban space into gallery of resistance. Flash mobs and silent prayers, groups assemble unexpectedly in public squares, line up shoulder to shoulder, recite a single Quranic phrase on free speech, then disperse before security arrives. These silent demonstrations leave no leaders to arrest, and their ephemeral nature magnifies their mystery and impact. When gates close on speech, architecture adapts. Secret tunnels, hidden rooms, whispered codes. Faith traditions once thrived through scribal communities preserving forbidden texts. Today's digital dissidents follow the same path. In the war between censorship and conscience, code and culture become our weapons of mercy. But each encrypted message and each clandestine mural carries a risk, the willingness to sacrifice comfort for conviction. Even the strictest regimes sometimes crack open the door to reform, only to slam it shut again when voices grow too bold. In this segment, we examine the paradox of legal change, amendments that promise free expression yet embed new traps. Who benefits when constitutions proclaim liberties, and who suffers when those same words become swords against dissent? Let's uncover the architects of reform and the unwritten clauses that keep the Ummah under watch. The mirage of constitutional guarantees. Egypt's 2014 Constitution, Article 65 declares freedom of opinion within the limits of public order and morality. Reformists hailed it as progress until public order was wielded to jail satirists. The promise of liberty dissolves into legal jargon where morality is endlessly redefined by security apparatuses. Indonesia's Press Freedom Clause. The 1999 amendments enshrined a free press, yet the 2018 Electronic Information Transaction Law revived colonial-era provisions to punish unpleasant content. Reformists and radicals alike fell victim to the same articles they once cheered. The reformers, allies or tokens, state-sanctioned critics. Some governments appoint faux reformists, mild-mannered journalists and scholars allowed to gripe about petty corruption, but never to question clerical power or blasphemy laws. These token dissidents become proof of liberalization, while real agitators face imprisonment. Diaspora lobbyists, exiled activists in London or Toronto draft model laws for home countries, publishing glowing white papers on human rights. Yet, without grassroots pressure, these texts remain academic curiosities, cited abroad but buried under local courts' verdicts. Judicial jujitsu leveraging public interest. Creative lawyers invoke maqasid al-shara, objectives of Islamic law, arguing that freedom of expression serves the higher aims of justice and knowledge. Occasionally, high courts strike down egregious censorship, only for legislatures to pass new restrictions the very next day. Selective enforcement. Prosecutors wield ambiguity. Bloggers face charges under one clause, while religious figures committing identical speech enjoy immunity. The law becomes a weapon in the hands of those with the right connections, not a shield for all citizens. Constitutions loaded with caveats grant the illusion of freedom without its substance. When liberty is conditioned on undefined morality or national security, Speech is free only so long as it pleases the powerful. True reform demands not new articles on paper, but new cultures of accountability, where laws bolster conscience rather than crush it. When formal channels of dissent are sealed, the young and the creative take to the streets and stages, transforming protest into performance. From Cairo's university squares to Tehran's underground galleries, students, poets, and performers raise their voices in defiance, using flash mobs, graffiti, and spoken word to pierce the silence. Tonight, we chart these cultural insurgencies and ask, can art and youth rebellion shatter walls of censorship when laws and algorithms fail? University squares as free speech zones, Tahrir's legacy. Revisited, in 2011, students reclaimed Cairo University's plazas with impromptu rallies, chalk slogans on walls reading, "Freedom is our birthright." Professors lent their lecture halls for open forums, blending academic debate with protest chants. Even after security forces cleared the square, these gatherings seeded networks that persisted in cafes and private salons. Tehran's Basij-free campus. In contrast to state-controlled campuses, pockets at Sharif University saw clandestine open mic nights where students read censored poetry and critiqued fatwas. Security raids followed, but each shutdown sparked broader online solidarity. Hashtags turned into virtual sit-ins that networked dissent beyond physical borders. Street theater and graffiti warfare, guerrilla performances. In Amman and Rabat, theater troupes stage satirical skits in public squares, masquerading as wedding dancers, only to break into monologues denouncing religious censorship. Cameras capture the audience's stunned silence before the applause erupts, and clips circulate on Facebook and Instagram, bypassing TV blackouts. Stencil battlegrounds, graffiti artists in Istanbul and Karachi spray stylized verses on shuttered shop fronts. Where words fall silent, walls will speak. Each mural is painstakingly recreated overnight if authorities paint over it, a nightly tug-of-war that maps the pulse of resistance. Digital flash mobs and viral rituals. Hashtag happenings. Students in Kuala Lumpur organize digital flash mobs. At noon every Friday, thousands post a single forbidden phrase under number Voice Unbound, overwhelming censors with sheer volume. Even when platforms block the tag, mirrors and offshoots emerge, turning each takedown into news fodder that amplifies the message. Virtual candlelight, vigils. In Bangladesh, activists live stream silent candle vigils for jailed writers. Participants light phones, screens in unison, comments flooding with Quranic prayers for justice. The glowing grid of faces becomes a symbol of communal solidarity, immune to physical dispersal. Creativity as conscience. When pen and paintbrush replace legal briefs, resistance transcends argument and becomes embodied. Youth-driven art refuses to ask permission. Instead, it asserts that truth need not be sanctioned to be spoken. In this dance between creation and suppression, each act of defiance is itself a sermon on freedom. When speech is shackled, song slips through the bars. In hidden gatherings from Karachi's alleyways to Istanbul's backstreets, Sufi qawwal and fiery verse become vessels of truth, blending sacred devotion with subtle protest. Tonight, we tune into these melodies of resistance and ask, can music and poetry awaken hearts when the mind's door is guarded by law and fear? The secret qawwal circles, chants beyond censorship. Sufi assemblies, majlis dhikr, gather under the cover of night. Qawwals recite refrains that on the surface glorify divine love, Allah Jahannam Ashik, but beneath the melody lie coded messages about freedom, solidarity, and the pain of enforced silence. These gatherings slip past police lines carried in memory rather than printed lyrics. Transmission by ear. Without recorded tracks, each listener becomes a living archive. A single verse memorized spreads through whispers in marketplaces and households, defying bans on public performance. The melody's emotive pull bypasses rational censorship, touching the soul directly. Revolutionary poets in the ranks underground anthologies. Poets compile samizdat collections, stapled pamphlets featuring verses like, "Our tongues are jailed, but our stanzas blaze, ink flows freer than your prison's maze." These zines circulate among activists, their sharp cadence a rallying cry that no detainment can mute. Open mic sanctuaries. In clandestine cafes, poets share new works under pseudonyms. Each performance ends with a silent moment of breath, symbolizing collective resolve. Video snippets, sans location tags, slip into social media shadows, inspiring solidarity across cities. Sound as spirit and strategy, emotional encryption. Melodies and meter convey protest without explicit slogans. A mournful raga in the kanun signals grief for lost rights. A sudden key change and percussive crescendo heralds collective uprising. Listeners attuned to musical cues decode calls to action buried in devotional art. Resilience in repetition. Choruses repeated in call and response foster communal identity. Each participant's echo, whether a whispered labaik or a whispered couplet, reinforces unity, forging emotional bonds stronger than any decree could sever. When words fail, music speaks. Faith traditions venerate sound, dhikr, adhan, nasheed. Yet when authorities silence speech, they inadvertently elevate song as the purest form of expression. In the tension between prohibition and praise, the believer discovers that the human spirit's true language is melody. When every podium is barred and every mic is muted, the truest echo of freedom is found in the heart's silent testimony and the soul's unchained song. We have wandered through kanuns of law, labyrinths of code, and canvases of protest. Now we return to the inner mosque, where the believer's own conscience becomes the final bulwark against tyranny. In this twilight of censorship, we ask, can the sanctity of silence and the potency of inner speech preserve freedom when all external voices are stilled? Silence as sacred witness. In prophetic tradition, moments of silent contemplation carry more weight than 1,000 sermons. When words risk betrayal under surveillance, silence becomes an act of worship, a private defiance that no law can touch. Each unspoken truth lives in the believer's chest, protected from banishment. Inner monologues and moral autonomy. The conscience whispers questions that no censor can erase. Is my faith authentic if I fear my own voice? By nurturing an inner dialogue, examining doubt, compassion, and conviction, the believer sustains a free spirit. This internal polis of ethics and reflection cannot be dismantled by outer decrees. The song that lives beyond sound, even when Kawal gatherings are shuttered, the melodies endure in memory. A single line hummed under one's breath revives communal bonds. This private chorus, songs learned by heart, becomes a secret archive of resistance, a soundtrack to solidarity woven into the soul. The unfettered word, finally, there comes a time to speak, not as a plea for permission, but as an assertion of inherent dignity. When legal gates reopen, the believer's voice, tempered by years of silent vigilance, carries a resonance that no external amplifier can match. True freedom is not granted, it is claimed from within. My dear sisters and brothers, remember, an empire of silence may rise around you, but within each heart there lies a sanctuary unchanged by decree. Cultivate that inner mosque of conscience, where silence becomes your prayer and memory your hymn. Let no fear of laws or algorithms extinguish the song that lives in your soul, for in that sacred space, freedom is forever unbound.